Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the EX374 Red Hat exam, Red Hat Certified Specialist in Developing Automation with Ansible Automation Platform. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click the subscribe button. And also, if you enjoy the video or find it useful, make sure you click like. I want to remind you that these are my practice sessions for the exam. The goal of these videos is I will talk about one of the objectives or one or more of the objectives and maybe try some examples of stuff the objective would want. And throughout the video and at the end, I'll do an assessment, and hopefully I will feel pretty confident with whatever the objective is and would feel comfortable with potential tasks on the exam that would be based off of that objective. And if I don't, then I have just under 2 weeks to do some final preparations and maybe fill in a couple of knowledge gaps. Obviously, 2 weeks is not enough time to learn everything, but by this point I should be pretty confident on most things and just have a few things I need to review. That being said, these should not be considered training materials, nor should they be considered any official type of tutorial. I myself am still learning. I do try to have the information accurate because I hope at this stage of my training I am working based off of accurate information, but just understand that these should not be considered authoritative training materials by any means. So I'm going to move into the Manage Execution Environments section of the objectives, and this, I think, probably not going to do a single video for each of the sub-objectives with this. I may be able to combine some stuff, but I want to talk about execution environments for a moment. And this is something that was new for me for this process. When I first learned about Ansible, it was you primarily just use Ansible Engine. I did not, I was never in an environment that had Ansible Tower. And the RHCE exam I took a couple of years ago was based around Ansible Engine. The redone Ansible automation platform, which is now Ansible Tower and a couple of other things that I don't think existed at the time when I was first learning about Ansible, or if it did, it wasn't, the generally available offering that Red Hat had for Ansible. But with the Ansible automation platform, and I'm not sure if it was specifically a version 2 thing or it was around with version 1 and then came out with version 2. Again, I have not been in an environment that has invested in that. Came this concept of execution environments. So the idea behind this is you're using containers to run your playbooks and such. So typically, I would log into my control node and Ansible playbook, whatever, and run my playbook there. And so that control node needs to have any Python dependencies that the playbook is going to have for its modules. It will have whatever collections installed on it that it needs and needs to have available. And in a smaller environment, that's probably not too big of an ask to have. But when you start getting some kind of unique dependencies and such, and I ran into this with what I work with on day-to-day basis. I'm one of the system administrators. I think my official title is like system engineer, but we all do engineering and administration work both at the same time. And our networking folks were wanting to get into working with Ansible, which is great. And what I found was for some of their networking modules and such, they needed some particular Python libraries and such available to them. Well, this presented a challenge for me in trying to set up an Ansible environment for them, because a lot of the packages, the Python packages, Python libraries that they needed are not a part of like standard Rail repos, just because they're new and they haven't Red Hat hasn't packaged them up yet. So that means we have to install stuff using pip or PyPI. And that's not the end of the world, but and of course I'm not a master of Python and PyPI and all that kind of stuff, but anyone that has dealt with PyPI knows that you're typically not installing stuff as root. You're not installing it system-wide. What you're going to do is make your Python virtual environment and install whatever pip packages and such that you need. So that adds, with the the VM that I'm using as my Ansible control node, that adds a layer of complexity of getting the network folks the dependencies that they need for their modules and such. And so my original idea was, all right, we're going to have the controller and then basically have two Python projects, two different directory trees, one for my team and then one for the network team to have their stuff separated. And so that was working well until I ran into these dependency things. And so I ultimately had to create Python virtual environments for them, which that in itself is not difficult to do. The ultimate solution was I spun them up another VM for them to do their Ansible stuff on, just because I was not able to manage in a sane way all the dependency differences between what we needed in the sysadmin system engineering side and what the network folks needed. And if I had available to me execution environments, I think that managing those dependencies would have been a lot easier, because, and this kind of comes back to the topic at hand, with the execution environments, those are containers that are running your playbook. And so you've noticed when I'm in some of my other videos, I'm running stuff with Ansible Navigator instead of Ansible Playbook. Ansible Navigator makes use of these execution environments. So I guess I'm going to be doing the run playbooks as well as the build in this video, which is fine. And I'll show you what I mean by this. Let me go into my terminal here. And if probably one of the easiest examples to show the difference between something is, we'll use, let me make a playbook here. All it's going to do is give us the hostname fact. So tasks, use good old debug. We'll just display Ansible facts hostname. Now, hostname of the machine that I'm on is AAP workstation. If I were to run this playbook from AAP workstation, I get that. If I run it with Ansible Navigator, I will get a different value for hostname. It's going to be whatever this container is. And if I were to take a look at Ansible Navigator.yml, not just Ansible Navigator, in this config file for Ansible Navigator, I specify that it's going to be using the EE supported RHEL 8 execution environment that is stored on my private automation hub. And so the fact that, there we go. The fact that showing Ansible Facts hostname is giving us a different hostname running there is giving us the hostname of the container that the execution environment is. And so what I could do in my situation at work, if I had the execution environment, if I was using execution environments, I could have an execution environment built specifically to have the dependencies that the network team needs for their modules and such, the different Python libraries and all that. And then I would have an execution environment for what my team needs. And so when we're running, let's say my team, well, it is my team. Sometimes my seems kind of odd. I don't own my team. I'm a part of it. But when we're running, the system administrators, system engineering playbooks will use that execution environment. And when network needs to run their playbooks, they use theirs. And that just makes it cleaner to deal with the dependencies. And I think that really comes into play when you're using the GUI, you're using the automation controller, because there you can, and I'll cover that in a different video. There's another couple of objectives about that. You can specify the execution environments to use for your different things that you're doing. But the execution environments are all well and good. The key, though, is we need to be able to build our own to customize them for whatever needs we actually have. What makes up the execution environment is basically it's a container that has Ansible core of a desired version, whatever version you want. It's another advantage there. Let's say you have, let's say the network team needs the bleeding edge, most recent version of Ansible core. We can put that in their execution environment. Let's say that my team has modules that require some older version of Ansible. specify that in the execution environment. Life's good. So we have Ansible core. The execution environment will include any collections that are needed to run your playbooks, and they'll include any Python installs, and even then also just other system packages that you might need to have available to you. And I'm defining system packages as non-Python stuff. Let's say that you need to have, I mean, odds are it's probably going to be on the system, but let's say that you need to have tar installed on your control node to be able to do some modules. Well, you can specify in your execution environment that tar needs to be there. Of course, it probably will. It's like on the most basic of all Linux containers, but you get the point there. So to build an execution environment, you need to have Ansible Builder. Now, I know this is available. I'm going to install it using DNF because I have access to the Ansible automation platform repos through my Red Hat developer subscription, but you can also install it via PyPI. I'm not sure, it may be in EPEL as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm going to go ahead and install it. I may have already installed it earlier, but if not, we'll install it now. DNF install Ansible Builder. Nope, already had it installed. Okay, good. I probably could have done RPM QA to have found that. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a directory. We're just going to call it EE. Now, to build an execution environment, you're going to need to have a YAML file that is dictating the bits that you're going to need for said execution environment, and that's I believe it's called just execution environment.yml. So in this YAML file, first, version, using version 1. This is just kind of memory from some of my other practice sessions and such. And we have, I think it's build options or build arguments. I'll show you something in just a moment. So if you're like me and you're having a brain fart at this moment as far as remembering, like I remember values to put in, but some of the other stuff I am forgetting. I'm going to try to do, yeah, there we go. Ansible Builder create we'll get to in a moment, but what you can use this for is if you have, had a brain fart like I did, and you forget the stuff that you can put in the execution environment, YAML just run Ansible Builder create with something that is not going to be valid, and it'll tell you. So build arg defaults is what I was looking for that. So we'll do execution environment. Change this to build arg defaults. And there are two things we're going to define here. We're going to do EE base image and EE builder image. Now, the base image, if you think back to if you've ever had to build container images, remember you have your build file, and you specify, from whatever image, and then you do all your instructions. And you can do multi-stage builds where, you're calling, let's say you call the one image to do stuff that has a bunch of artifacts that it makes that you don't need in the final image. You call another image to take bits from the original image, put it into the last image. So your final image that goes to your container registry is the smallest size possible. So you technically don't need a builder image. From what I understand, the differences of these, base image is just what it says. This, we're going to be using the one of the Red Hat images for this. And as long as it ultimately contains what you need, you don't necessarily need the builder image. The builder image, from what I understand, is if you need to have stuff built by the base image, and you need like a clean image to create or to install your collections and all that, that's where the builder image comes in. I am obviously not an expert in that. That's something I actually need to look over again before the exam to make sure I have the differences between the two in my head. I know you don't need both. You have to start with a base image, but that's something I do need to look up. But what I'm going to do is grab some image names real quick. Go to my automation hub. I guess we'll start with the, oh yeah, we can do this and we can kind of practice getting some of the dependencies. That'll be kind of nifty. I was going to start with supported rel 8, but we'll start with minimal rel 8 and see what happens. So this one is going to be hub or aphub.egslab.com/image name. And the other is Ansible Builder rel 8. Now, if you were to install Ansible Builder from upstream just with pip, it's going to have, I think it's Ansible Runner, and there's one more, maybe Ansible Builder, but they're going to be from key.io. One thing to keep in mind is if you do use the stuff from Red Hat, the actual like EE supported stuff, that's not things you can distribute. So just keep that in mind. Or I don't believe there is, but you can find some documentation out there about like what you can and can't like redistribute from Red Hat stuff. All right, the other thing that I'm going, actually there's a couple of things I'm going to use. I'm going to specify, was it just config or Ansible config? Ansible config. This I'm going to drill a couple of times just to try to have it better in my head. There's one thing about the Red Hat exams, you can find documentation kind of like this in there, but if you're having to look up every single little thing, then you're going to run out of time with the objectives. And if this exam is going to be anything like RHCE, which was the basic Ansible exam, I'm probably going to use like every last moment of my time. So I need to be as efficient as I can be, which is not, memorize everything, but some things like this I need to make sure I have fresh in my head. And this Ansible config, we don't necessarily have to have this, but it's going to be reading that file. And then dependencies, we're going to have a requirements.yml for collections. If we had particular Python requirements, we could put, I think it's just Python. This will be requirements.txt. And then if we had packages for your system, that would be a bindeps.txt. Now there's some syntax with bindeps. I know you can just list packages, but there's some other syntax that would allow you to specify like from what repos these are and different versions and such. That I don't have memorized. I'm probably going to try to review that just to get a feel for the syntax. But otherwise, this will be a list of packages. One thing to keep in mind is if you declare something here with dependencies, you need to have the actual file that lists the dependencies. So I'm actually going to get, we'll keep that there. Might as well practice it. So I'm going to create my requirements.yml file, collections, and I'm actually going to use one that I created in the in a previous video, and that was that list EX374. I think it was .practice was the collection I made. So we're going to make sure that's in there. That's another advantage of using the execution environments is, let's say you've made custom collections. Well, bake that into your execution environment. So requirements. I want to make sure this actually is here. Editor. Okay, good. Oh, so that actually came from Google. That's interesting. All right, so that was the thing that's needed for the Ansible utils IP adder modules, not modules, filter, lookup filter, not. Got to get my terminology right. That was for the Ansible utils IP adder filter. Yeah, it is a filter. Yeah, it's a filter. It's not a lookup. It says 17:51 here. I don't have the right time zone. It's almost 9 p.m. on a Sunday, and I'm tired. Anyway, I don't necessarily need that for what I'm wanting to do, but it's more of a just testing this out here. So IP adder, and for some reason, I think it's bindeps. We're going to say we need to have HTTPD installed. Why not? We'll put a web server on our container image for Ansible execution environments. Bit of a contrived kind of thing here, but you got to have a little bit of fun with it, right? So at this point, I need my Ansible config. So let me copy. There we go. So at this point, we should have everything we need to build our execution environment. I think it's just bin deps, not DEPT. All right, so that looks better. So if we didn't need to do any other task, we could use Ansible Builder build command, and it will create the directory structure that's needed and basically build your execution environment for you, and you're ready to go. But let's say that, let's do Ansible Builder create. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, Galaxy's Python system. Again, good. Yeah, because you could technically have roles with this as well. So it's really requirements for Ansible Galaxy. Let's try that again. All right, notice it says build context can be found in this context folder. So we're going to go into here. Let's do tree. And we see within _build, this are the same files that we just did, and we see a container file. Let's take a look at this container file. And this will look very similar to what you've dealt with if you've had to build a container image before. You can see the base image, gather stuff, and then the builder image. That's where we are. It's like we're gathering all of our requirements. All of our dependencies and such. It goes back to the base image, and it is, is basically building our image. So if you needed to, let's say you're using an internal certificate authority, and you need to include the root CA cert in your image. Well, what you could do, rather than doing Ansible Builder build, which will blow this away and make a new, do create, you have you can include your CA file and have an instruction in your container file, or in the container file have an instruction that's, add this file to your container. So that's a thing that we could do. But at this point, really all I would need to do is go up a level here. Or I don't necessarily have to do that. Well, I could do this. So if I wanted to, I could do podman build -f, and we'll give it the path to the container file. Pretty sure I'm doing this right. We'll see what happens. And it's going to build us a container image. Oh yeah. I'm using self-signed certs. So that's going to be a problem. I thought there was a way to tell Podman to basically ignore that. But no, we're going to run into an issue with Ansible Galaxy. I know you can do the command Ansible Galaxy and do ignore certificates. So I'm going to blow away because this is made like this little thing here. Let me get rid of this. All right, so let's look at that container file again. Now, I would hope on the actual Red Hat exam, I'm not going to have to deal with certificate issues. But I'm not running my own CA and I'm not buying a cert for this, so I think I can do, we'll add ignore certs to that. Let's see if that is enough to do what we need to do. That's one advantage of doing that Ansible create, because if I had just done Ansible builder, actually let me demonstrate that. So we'll get rid of context. We're just going to do Ansible builder build. And you can see that that's basically what it's going to do, and it's trying to actually make the directory. Yeah, so it made the directory, and it's going to fail on the same thing. So rmrf context. It's like create is one stage of the building process, and then build is make the container, and the command build will just go ahead and do the create stage of it. So let's go back to our container file. Let's see if that'll be enough to get us by. Ansible. We want to do podman build f context container file context. And that's getting better. And this will probably take a couple minutes, so I think I might pause the recording, and then once something meaningful happens, I'll pick back up, so you're not just listening to silence and watching nothing occur on your screen. And at long last, we have an image, and this took a while to do, and one of the reasons is because I chose to start with the base image. Or not base image, the minimal image rather than the E supported image. But I wanted to go through a lot of stuff, and I'll try to go back and do a little bit of editing to where you kind of see some phases of it. But you saw where it was installing HTTPD and all sorts of stuff. So if I do podman images, I'm going to see that I made a terrible mistake, and I forgot to actually tag the image. So I'm going to need to do this again. This actually may be faster if I, well, it shouldn't take very long. Let me add a tag, and I'm going to name it aphub.egslab.com, and we're going to call it test EE. So hopefully this shouldn't take nearly as long. I would hope not, at least. There we go. All right, so now podman images. All right, so now we have our test EE. So let me go back to the objectives. So I'm not going to be able to do all of the execution environment stuff in one video. So we built an execution environment, and it was successful. Granted, it's kind of ridiculous because it has HTTPD in it. And we run playbooks in an execution environment. All right, that we can do. We can test this. What I wanted to do, believe we can do Ansible Navigator. All right, images, that's it. Ansible Navigator, and I need to tell it to use or do images. I was thinking exec, but no, that's not what I want. And I want to specify mode as interactive. Right now I have it just default to standard out, but for this we need to see interactive. Why is that trying to pull? Oh, I know why. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Let's try that again, because I realized the yeah, I understand why I was trying to pull from key.io is because I was still in the EE directory and did not have my Ansible Navigator config file. This works better. All right, and now we see actually listed is the test EE execution environment. And within Ansible Navigator, you can drill down into this, use the number 3 for that. Let's take a look at Python packages. And we should see the IP adder is in there. Yep. Press escape to go back. We can look at Ansible version and collections. We see the collections that it includes is Community General, Ansible POSIX, and we knew that because the installing that practice collection that I made for a previous video had those as dependencies, and by default it's using the newest Ansible core. You can see the OS packages, and if I were to scroll down here, we should see HTTPD. Yep. So it has a web server installed on it, which I would not recommend doing for any of your execution environments, but just for showing how to write something for the bin.deps file. And then you could do 5 and show everything that's in there. So what I'm going to do is go into Ansible Navigator, and I am going to comment out image. This should still work because I don't want to have to change pull policy, and I have this TLS verify false, so that way we don't have to, when something is pulled, we don't have to deal with, well, this is not going to matter because it's not going to matter anyway because the images are already here. Either way, so let's make our foo.yaml, and we're going to run this against node 1. And all we're going to do is just to demonstrate this, because I know videos, well, I'm going to edit a good bit of that out, but it's kind of getting long for me. And the chair I'm sitting in is unfortunately not that comfortable, so I have to give myself a break. So that was that practice, and I think the name of the role was hello. So if I were to run this foo.yaml playbook, and the image that I use is the supported rel 8 image, this playbook should fail because obviously my little custom made collection and role there is not going to be present in the image. Now, again, to use the execution environment images, you have to use Ansible Navigator to run your playbooks. You, to the best of my knowledge, cannot do that with good old Ansible Playbook. So Ansible Navigator, run, and we're going to run foo.yml, and we're going to specify EEI, execution, I think it's execution environment image is what that stands for. And let's see what happens. I expect this to fail. Yep, and it appears that the role was not found. But this time, if I were to tell it to use the test EE, this should, famous last words in IT, work. No. So why would that be? Because we know that it's, unless I misspelled it. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, famous last words should, right? Images. Interactive. Oh, I'm not telling it what image to use. So let's do EEI. Try EEI. That will probably be better. Okay, so test EEI, versions and collections. We have, yeah, there's no more that we can drill in. So the EX374 practice is in there. So let us, I forget interactive. Oh, yeah. No, I just messed up my syntax. Because this is some good troubleshooting to have to deal with. Did I misspell that? M interactive. All right, let me check one other thing by feeding it some nonsense. Yeah, so collections is right. And navigator. Okay, let's try this again. Ansible. Those of you watching probably see whatever error that I've done, and clearly I'm missing. I'm not seeing it. Ansible Navigator collections, mode interactive. EEI is going to be my test EE. Yeah, so I have some, there's something causing that to fail. So there must be something up with my my execution environment. Grumble, because I thought I had a valid execution environment. Well, actually, I know that I would have, because otherwise that would have failed immediately. Yeah, and that's just going to have Ansible built in. So something must be up with my test execution environment. So when in doubt, let's see if we can figure this out. All right, so I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to get rid of stuff that we don't actually need for this. So I'm going to get rid of requirements.txt. I'm also going to get rid of bin deps. So that's not an actual thing that we need. Requirements.yaml. We're going to keep that. I need to update execution environment because we're not having those. I'm actually not going to specify an Ansible config for this either. I have a feeling that might be affecting things. Get rid of Ansible navigator.log, RMRF context, and let's do Ansible. Now I know I have to do Ansible create because I need to make that change in the container file to tell it to ignore self-signed certs. So Ansible build create, builder create. There's the Ansible Galaxy thing. I'm going to blow away all of the images, or so I thought. Oh, just Podman RMI-A. That'll probably take a moment. There we go. And Podman build F will be context container file context, and then -t will be AAP hub ejslab.com test EE. And let's see what happens this time. And again, for the final video, I'll I didn't like that. So where did I make a mistake? Failed to satisfy requirements. Well, it built before. Let's do this. I'm not going to start with the minimal image this time. I'm going to start with the supported image because I wonder if maybe there's a Python thing. EX374 Practice is the name of the collection. Maybe I blew it away from Automation Hub. I shouldn't have. Yeah, EX374 . Wait a minute. No, it's there. EX374 Practice. Okay, so it's there. Let's do our container file bit again. And I wonder if I could pass some type of argument to keep from having to do this. Yep, there's my requirements file. All right, let's try to build that container again. So now it's going to have to pull down the supported one. Nope, it doesn't like my little collection. Well then, let me look at, I got rid of it. I think I know why. I think I'm going to need to have Ansible config, and I'll show you. Go ahead and add this into the configuration here. And this is why. Let me cat my Ansible config. I have all of the Galaxy stuff configured here. So I guess it is going to have that. All right, so RMRF still doesn't explain the failure before, but we're now using a different base image. And so let me look at my images here. It would have built some stuff. So Podman RMI-A, blow everything away again. We'll do Podman Ansible builder create. Oh, Ansible underscore config. Podman -build. Yeah, probably too tired to be doing these now. Ansible -builder create. All right, and we will edit the container file. And I'm lazy, so I'm going to use history. All right, now it's going to have to copy down the supported image and build us a new one. And I will return soon with the finished image, and we'll see what happens. You know, I'm going to stop this here. I wonder if that might be that might be part of the issue. Okay, so let me alter Ansible config and remove collections path. I'm curious to see what will happen with this. So podman rmi-a, force the getting rid of these things. Let's try building this again. Well, it looks like that didn't make a difference. Well, we'll see what happens when it finishes making the image. Though I do wonder if specifying a collections path in my Ansible config file is what caused that to fail before. So that would kind of make sense because, you know, we did that test collection on a previous video using the standard Ansible execution environment, and it worked because I was specifying this is where you can also look for collections, I guess, that are outside of just what's in the execution environment, or only look in that place. So we'll see what happens. But this shouldn't take nearly as long to build because we're not putting in HTTPD and a bunch of other stuff, and we're not starting from the minimal image. It's kind of nice that it does DNF update, so that way your image is patched. All right, still took longer than I thought it would. I think it took less time than it did before. So podman images. All right, so now we have our test EE, and let's go back to here. Ansible no, not just Ansible. Ansible.cfg. I'm going to get rid of the collections path from here, and let's see what happens when we run our playbook with the test EE environment. Hopefully this will work. So foo.yml EI is this. Yay! All right, and now let's run it from the just supported environment, and this should fail because the supported environment does not have the collection that we want. Now I'm curious, I want to run that, see if we can view information using the test EE again. So navigator, collections, and M interactive, then test EE is our. Okay, so I'm not quite sure why Ansible Navigator is crashing on that, because for the purposes of executing a playbook, that execution environment is working. So maybe I've done something weird for Ansible Navigator. But going back to the objective. So we did build an execution environment. We finally got it to work. I'm sure there's probably better ways of doing what I did. And we ran playbooks in an execution environment. We did 2 different ones. So I'm not going to deal with uploading the Automation Hub and doing stuff in Automation Controller with this video, because even though the final product is going to be shorter, I'm already up to like hour and 15 minutes almost of recording, and I need a little bit of a break. So if you have made it all the way to the end and watched the troubleshooting and the trying to figure out what's going on, good for you. I wish I could give you a little virtual cookie, but alas, I have neither the virtual cookies nor the ability to give. But I do thank you for taking the time to watch. And as always, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video and invite you to subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you did enjoy the video or find it useful, or at least get a laugh at me struggling with execution environments, make sure you give it a like, and I will see you the next time.